It's one of the most famous openings to a novel in all of literature. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. That is the first sentence to Leo Tolstoy's 1878 novel, Anna Karenina. It's a lots of hundreds of pages, and I'm a pretender in giving this opening illustration. I haven't read it, but I've been to school, and so I've read people who have read it. The story is about Anna's extramarital affair and how her search for happiness ends in despair and leads to the unraveling of her life and so many families within the story. One of the ironies is, and sort of keeping with often Russian literature, there's actually really no happy families in the whole story. The story is told in the past tense, and this opening sentence is given in the present tense, which makes it function as a kind of timeless maxim. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. That's the timeless proverb, and then the whole story is to give an illustration in the complicated tale about all that unfolds with Anna Karenina. The first line, if you think about it, presents a dichotomy that most modern people do not like. And this is on the cusp of the modern world and Russia modernizing at the end of the 19th century and liberation movements and revolutions in the air. Because you think about that opening line, it presents to us a choice that modern people do not want to make. You can choose happiness, or you can choose to go your own way and be utterly unique. Because that's the choice. Happy families, he says, are alike. And unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. We'd like to think the message we get bombarded with 100 times a week is you be you. You do you. You find your own one special niche in life. You follow, you march to the beat of your own drummer, and you do you. Whatever is unique, you be true to your own truth. And you follow that, and true happiness is found in marching out your own path, finding out your own course. And this opening line presents just the opposite. Well, there are a lot of ways to find unhappiness. But there are certain fundamentals that must be present if you are to be happy, at least as he's thinking about a family. You know, any coach in any sport will tell you, you gotta get down the fundamentals. Or any teacher teaching, whether it's math or history, there's certain things. You know, if you're gonna play basketball, before you can get to the NBA, you need to know how to box out, and you need how to do this with your wrist when you take a shot, and you need to know you need to know certain fundamentals of the game. And yes, there's many ways after that to excel, but until you have those, you're not going to be any good. Part of what Tolstoy is saying is, yeah, of course, there's lots of different happy families, but they all have certain things in common. And if you try to go about things in your own way, you're going to find a myriad of paths that lead to unhappiness. It's interesting that the book has as its epigraph, you know, on the title page, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," from Romans 12:19, which tells you something about the impetus and the aim of the book. Now, this passage in Genesis 27, it's certainly about more than family life, but it's not less than that. And you can see it from the macro structure of the passage. If you're not there already, turn to Genesis 27. Like so many passages in Genesis, there's a bookend. We've seen this many times, that the story has at the front end and at the back end the same sort of message or the same kind of event. It's a bookend. on our bookshelf. You have that hold the books together. Well, you have it here. Look at chapter 26, 34 through 35. I said last week, this is a transition between 26 and 27. When Esau was 40 years old, he took these Hittite women to be his wives. So the story starts with Esau marrying two Hittite wives. Now, flip the page to 28, verses 6 through 9, and you see the heading, Esau marries an Ishmaelite. So the story here, bookending this passage, begins with Esau marrying two Hittite women, and it ends by Esau trying to make up for that mistake because his parents were very unhappy, and so he marries a daughter from the line of Ishmael. In other words, the story starts with a bad decision in the family, namely Esau marrying the wrong sort of wife. And it ends with Esau trying to undo this bad decision, but by the time we get to the end of the story, we all know it's already too late for Esau to undo all that has been set in motion. So the bookends to this story tell us that yes, this is going to be about more than a family, but it's not less than that. And in between those bookends, we have a narrative which is comprised of 7 dialogues. As is usually true in Hebrew narrative, the dialogues are all between just 2 people. When you think about it, it is hard to think in the Old Testament stories where there is dialogue with multiple, 3, 4 groups of people at the same time. It's almost always in pairs. And so we have 7 dialogues. Isaac and Esau, Rebekah and Jacob, Isaac and Jacob, Isaac and Esau, Rebekah and Jacob, Rebekah and Isaac, and then finally Isaac and Jacob. Our outline is very simple. We're going to work through reading each of those 7 narratives, giving some explanatory points along the way, and then we will finish by drawing out 3 lessons from this story. So follow along as I read, and here we are in chapter 27, verse 1, with the first of these 7 dialogues between Isaac and Esau. When Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. Do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." So here's Isaac. He's old. He's blind. He's still controlled by his physical appetites. It's really a sad picture of Isaac nearing the end of his days. Now we know he actually goes on to live quite a bit longer, but he doesn't know. And he's still controlled by his physical appetite. He's thinking about food. And so he says, "Esau, I want you to go out. Take your weapons, your quiver, your bow. Go out, field, hunt, game." Many men are going to say in the weeks ahead, "See, it's right there in the Bible. I got to go hunting." But it is Esau. So, it's you got some pluses, you got some minuses. It raises a question, did Isaac know what the Lord had said to Rebekah? We're never quite told. Remember back in chapter 25, the Lord said to her, "2 nations are in your womb, and the younger will be over the older will serve the younger." Did that get passed on? Did Rebekah share that with Isaac? We don't know. Surely he must have known about what we read in the end of chapter 25, namely Esau selling his birthright. That would have been hard to have kept secret all these years. Surely that was known, but we're never exactly told. But the picture here is not flattering, because Isaac proceeds along the same path he's always been on. Whatever had happened, whatever promises had been given, whatever exchange had been made with the birthright, Isaac is still thinking, "This is my favorite son, and I love this son because he gets me the yum-yum. He gets me all the good food that I like, and he gets me the meat just the way I like it, and I want to eat and I want to bless him. We come to the second dialogue between Rebekah and Jacob, verse 5. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. His mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, bring them to me. So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son, and the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck, and she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. Rebekah is really the principal actor in this story, but unfortunately her actions are unprincipled. Perhaps it's not incidental that after this story she drops off almost entirely from the book of Genesis. We know that she's buried in the cave of Machpelah, but strangely her death is not mentioned. Instead, Genesis 35:8 mentions the death of her nurse, Deborah. So might there be some reason that here Rebekah, who shows herself to be a very strong woman, and yet as she is the principal character here, she's unprincipled, and so we don't hear from her. The risk, as she conceives of this plan, is great for Jacob. Jacob's initially nervous, not so much because he perhaps has a heart that's sensitive to the Lord, but he understands that I am conducting myself in order to get the blessing in a way that is really deserving of the curse. This is high risk, high reward, Mom. If this goes wrong, and let me tell you how it can go wrong. Have you ever looked? Have you noticed how smooth my skin is? You seen Esau? See what a furry guy is when he's at the beach? You see that? This is gonna go really bad. And so Mom says, I got it, I'll figure it out. I got his clothes, put this on you'll be furry, don't worry about it. And if anything goes bad, okay, I'll take the curse. Next, scene 3, Isaac and Jacob, verse 18. So he went in to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. Then he said, bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. His father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. So despite God's word to Rebekah, and despite the exchange of food for the birthright, Isaac is still intent on blessing Esau. Esau is his firstborn, his favored son. But as we see in a comedy of errors, he gives Abraham's promised blessing by mistake to the younger son, Jacob. Now we know that this was God's foreordained plan, but this was not the means that God desired for the plan to be carried out. Jacob is a deceiver. Look at verse 19. We've moved away from Abraham sort of convincing himself, well, she's my sister after all. She's kind of a half-sister, to Isaac lying about his wife. And now we have absolute deception. Who are you? I am Esau. There's no way to spin that. That's not just, truth adjacent. That is a lie. First lie is a deception. The second lie is blasphemy, taking the Lord's name in vain. Verse 20, how did you get this done so quickly? He brings the Lord's name into his lie. Well, the Lord, your God, Yahweh, granted me success. It is to compound his sin and deception that now he blasphemes the name of the Lord and claims that the reason this has happened so quickly is because of the Lord's favor. He's multiplied his offense. The focus here has shifted from the birthright to the blessing. If you go back to chapter 25, you can see the focus there is on the birthright. We see it in verses 31, 32, 33, 34, all about the birthright. Now we have the blessing. We see it in verse 12, verse 35, verse 36, verse 41. The Hebrew words almost sound alike. It's actually a fortuitous event in the English language that our words, birthright and blessing, also start with the same letter. Because in Hebrew, birthright is bekorah and blessing is berakah. You can hear that they almost sound identical. Bekorah, berakah. Birthright and blessing were overlapping ideas, but they were not identical. The birthright went to the child, usually the firstborn son, who was to receive the material inheritance. The birthright was about who would receive the possessions or the lion's share of the possessions. That's the birthright, and it normally went to the firstborn son. And we've already seen how Jacob schemed to get that inheritance birthright. The blessing was the patriarch's prerogative to project into the future what would happen to the son and his family. So the blessing, in one sense, is more ambiguous, but also more important. The birthright has to do with physical, material inheritance and possessions. The blessing has to do with what is going to become of this man and of his family. And you notice in verses 28 and 29, Jacob, or rather Isaac, calls for three things for Jacob in the blessing. Number one, may God give you prosperity. That's verse 28. The dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, grain and wine. We would say, may you have houses and cars and bank accounts full of money. May you be blessed with prosperity. Number two, may Jacob have prominence over the nations and over his brothers. That's the first part of verse 29. And then the third part of the blessing is the reciprocation at the end of verse 29. Cursing upon those who curse you, blessing upon those who bless you. So there's threefold to this blessing: prosperity, prominence, and reciprocation. Now, before we go to the next scene, notice something here that surely is deliberate. The picture that's painted of Isaac is of a man who is completely at his wit's end. He's a weak man. And how do we see that? Notice all 5 of his senses have failed him in this debacle. Well, his sight, we know that he can't see anymore. That's what starts this all. But then his taste, well, his taste buds are what led him into this mess in the first place, because he favored Esau because he liked the taste of the food. And that's what led him. I want to bless you, and I want one more of your great meals from your hunting. So his sight has failed him. His taste has led him astray. His touch has deceived him. He comes and he touches the hands of his son, but he's fooled. And he concludes that it's Jacob or it's Esau when it's really Jacob. And then his ears are the only thing that actually work. He says, it is the voice of Esau. But he allows his other senses to override his sense of hearing. And he says, well, I guess I must be hearing incorrectly, because the voice is Esau, but the hands are, vice versa, Jacob, but it's Esau. My speech is failing me. And then finally, as if that's not enough, look at verse 27. Even his sniffer gets in the mix. He came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments. Remember, he's wearing Esau's clothes. And he says, you smell like my son. His sight, his taste, his touch, his hearing, his smell, all 5 senses have let him down. The picture is of a weak man thoroughly duped by his conniving wife and son, but more than that, he's also fooled by his own passions, his own appetites. And as we'll see at the very conclusion, the contrast here is meant to show us this is when you live your life controlled by your 5 senses. What's the alternative? To live a life controlled by faith. I'm going to go by what I can hear and see and touch and smell. My 5 senses, they fail him catastrophically because he is no longer living the life of faith that he should have lived.